She fainted at Roadside, and when doctor revealed her pregnancy, the billionaire asked, "Is it my child?" The hospital room was silent, except for the steady beeping of monitors displaying 2 heartbeats. One belonged to Angela Reyes. The other belonged to the child growing inside her. A child that Jeffrey Murphy, the man sitting rigid in the plastic chair beside her bed, had just learned existed. Angela watched him with eyes that held 14 months of exhaustion, 14 months of survival, 14 months of building a life without the man who had shattered hers. Her hospital gown did nothing to hide the swell of her belly. 7 months pregnant, the evidence of everything she had carried alone. Jeffrey leaned forward, his $4,000 suit wrinkled and sweat-stained from carrying her unconscious body through emergency room doors. His hands trembled slightly. His voice emerged barely above a whisper. "Is it my child?" The question hung in the sterile air like an indictment. Not of her, of him, of everything they had been and everything he had destroyed. Angela's expression shifted. Hurt first, raw and immediate, the kind of pain that comes from being wounded in the exact place you feared most. Then anger, cold and crystalline, sharpening her features into something he barely recognized. Then finally, exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, though that was present too. Soul exhaustion. The weariness of someone who had been fighting alone for too long. "You really have to ask me that." Her voice was steady despite everything. "After everything we shared, after everything I gave you. Your first instinct is doubt." Jeffrey opened his mouth to respond, to explain, to defend himself with logic and circumstance, but Angela raised her hand, stopping him. "No. Let me finish. Because this moment right here, this question you just asked, this is exactly why I never told you. This is exactly why I disappeared 14 months ago, carrying your child, and never looked back. Because I knew, Jeffrey. I knew that when the moment came, when you had to choose between trusting me and protecting yourself, you would choose yourself. You always do. Angela, I did not mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" She leaned forward despite the 4 in her arm, despite the monitors tracking her vital signs, despite the 7 months of pregnancy weighing on her body. "Explain to me how a man asks the woman he claimed to love whether the child she is carrying belongs to him. Explain to me how that question is not exactly what it sounds like. You left." The words burst from Jeffrey with an edge he could not control. "You left without a word, without a note, without any explanation. You kept my child from me for 14 months. I find you collapsed on a highway. I carry you into this hospital. I discover you are pregnant, and you expect me to just accept everything without question. I expect you to know me." Angela's voice cracked for the first time, revealing the devastation beneath her composure. "I expect you to remember who I am, who we were. I expect that after 2 years together, after planning a future, after every single time I stood beside you, you would have enough faith in me to know that I would never lie about something like this. But clearly, I was just a chapter you closed without reading the ending." The silence that followed was devastating. Jeffrey stared at her, watching tears she refused to shed glistening in her eyes. He thought about the night she left. He thought about the 14 months of pretending he was fine. He thought about the hollow victories of billion-dollar deals that meant nothing when he came home to an empty penthouse. He thought about asking himself, every single night at 3 in the morning, what he had done wrong. And now he knew. He had just done it again. But before we discover whether Jeffrey Murphy can ever become the man Angela needed him to be, before we learn what truly happened the night she left and why she chose to carry his child alone, we need to go back to a scorching summer highway where a woman collapsed and a billionaire's world shattered into pieces he is only beginning to understand. This is a story about how we destroy the people we love without even realizing we are doing it, about the devastating distance between who we think we are and who we actually become in our worst moments, about whether broken things can ever truly be made whole again, or whether some damage is simply permanent. And it begins with heat. The summer sun pressed down on the coastal highway like divine punishment. Waves of shimmer rose from asphalt that had not seen rain in 6 weeks. The air itself seemed to vibrate, thick and hostile, the kind of heat that made breathing feel like work. Angela Reyes walked along the shoulder of the road, her sandals worn thin from miles already traveled, her pale blue dress clinging to her back with perspiration. The bus had broken down, 3 miles back, stranding 30 passengers in the middle of nowhere while the driver called for a replacement that might never come. Most passengers had stayed with the bus, seeking shade beneath its bulk, rationing water bottles, complaining about delays and ruined schedules. Angela had looked at them, looked at the empty roads stretching toward the next town, and made a decision. She would walk. It was not a wise decision. She knew this, even as she made it. 7 months pregnant, dehydrated, exhausted from weeks of stress and months of survival. Walking 3 miles in this heat was dangerous, bordering on reckless. But Angela had spent 14 months making impossible choices. She had learned that waiting for rescue meant waiting forever. She had learned that the only person she could truly count on was herself. And she had learned that moving forward, even when forward seemed impossible, was better than standing still and disappearing. So she walked, one foot in front of the other, her hand occasionally resting on the swell of her belly, where her daughter kicked and shifted, restless in the heat. Her eyes fixed on the distant shimmer that might be buildings, might be salvation, might be a mirage created by desperation and dehydration. The job interview was in 2 hours. A technology company in the next town, looking for administrative staff. It was a long shot. 7 months pregnant, applying for entry-level positions rarely inspired confidence in employers. But long shots were all Angela had left. The clinic where she had worked for 6 months had closed 3 weeks ago. Budget cuts, they said, as if those 2 words explained the devastation of 30 employees suddenly unemployed, as if fiscal responsibility was adequate justification for destroying livelihoods. Angela had been 7 months pregnant with no job, no savings, and no safety net. She had applied for every position within 50 miles. This interview was the first callback she had received. Missing it was not an option. The dizziness started subtly, a gentle spinning that she attributed to the heat, to dehydration, to the relentless sun beating down on her uncovered head. She should have brought a hat. She should have brought more water. She should have done 1,000 things differently, but should have was a luxury she could not afford. She kept walking. Her vision blurred slightly at the edges. The road seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She reached out instinctively for something to steady herself, but there was nothing except empty air and the distant sound of an approaching car. Just a little further. She whispered the words to herself, to her daughter, to whatever force might be listening. Just a little further, and we will be okay. But her body had reached its limit. The world tilted sideways. Angela felt her knees buckle, felt the ground rushing up to meet her, felt a moment of pure terror as she thought about her baby, about the fall, about everything she was about to lose. Then she felt nothing at all. Jeffrey Murphy had not driven his own car in years. That was what drivers were for. That was what staff existed to handle. The mundane logistics of getting from one place to another, the pedestrian concerns of traffic and parking and route selection. These were beneath a man who commanded a telecommunications empire worth $2.3 billion. But today, something had compelled him to take the wheel himself. He could not explain it. Not logically, and Jeffrey Murphy dealt almost exclusively in logic. He had woken that morning in his Manhattan penthouse with the same hollow feeling that had plagued him for 14 months, the same 3 a.m. restlessness that no amount of success could cure. His calendar showed meetings, calls, decisions requiring his attention. Normal, expected, empty. Instead of summoning his driver, he had walked to the private garage beneath his building. Instead of taking the town car or the SUV with tinted windows, he had chosen the sports car he rarely touched. Instead of heading to the office, he had driven toward the coast. He told himself he needed to think. He told himself the ocean air would clear his head. He told himself this detour was strategic, a mental reset before a crucial afternoon of negotiations. He did not tell himself the truth, that he was running from something, that the penthouse felt like a mausoleum, that every room echoed with the absence of someone who had walked out 14 months ago and never returned. Angela. He did not think her name consciously. He had trained himself not to, but she was there anyway, beneath every thought, behind every decision, the ghost that haunted his hollow victories. The coastal highway stretched before him, empty and sun-blasted. He drove faster than necessary, the speed a substitute for feeling, the wind through the open window a replacement for connection. His hands gripped the leather steering wheel as if controlling something, anything, might make him feel less out of control. He saw her from 200 yards away, a figure in pale blue, walking along the shoulder of the road. His first thought was irritation. Who walks on a highway in this heat? His second thought was concern. Something about her gait seemed wrong, unsteady, struggling. Then she collapsed. His foot slammed the brake instinctively, the car skidding slightly before stopping. He was out and running before his conscious mind caught up with his body, Dress shoes pounding against hot pavement, the heat irrelevant, the distance closing in seconds that felt like hours. He reached her. He crouched down. He turned her over. His heart stopped. Angela. For 3 seconds, Jeffrey Murphy forgot how to breathe. The woman lying unconscious in his arms, pale and still, her face slack in a way that terrified him, was the woman who had walked out of his life 14 months ago. The woman he had searched for in every crowd, heard in every laugh, missed with an intensity he had refused to acknowledge. And she was pregnant. Visibly, undeniably, impossibly pregnant. The swell of her belly pressed against her blue dress. 7 months, maybe more. His mind began calculating automatically, the way it always did when confronted with numbers, with data, with information that needed to be processed. 14 months since she left. 7 months pregnant. The timeline did not work, could not work, unless she had been pregnant when she left, unless she had walked away carrying his child, unless everything he thought he knew was wrong. Angela. His voice cracked on her name. Angela, can you hear me? No response. Her pulse was threading beneath his fingertips, present but weak. Her skin was hot, too hot, dehydration and heat exhaustion written across her unconscious features. He lifted her with arms that trembled, carried her to his car with steps that felt unreal. He laid her in the back seat as carefully as if she were made of glass, his hands shaking as he brushed hair from her face. Stay with me. He heard himself say the words without deciding to speak them. You do not get to leave again. Not like this. He drove faster than he had ever driven in his life. The coastal highway blurred into streaks of color. His eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror, checking that she was still breathing, still present, still not slipping away before he could ask her the 1,000 questions burning in his chest. The hospital appeared like a miracle. Small, coastal, nothing like the gleaming medical centers he typically frequented. But it was close, and close was all that mattered when the woman in his back seat might be dying, might be carrying his child, might be the answer to 14 months of questions he had been too proud to pursue. He pulled into the emergency entrance and was out of the car before the engine fully stopped. He opened the back door, lifted Angela into his arms, and carried her through automatic doors into a world of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Help. The word tore from his throat, louder than he intended, rawer than he knew he could sound. Someone help her. Please. Staff materialized. A gurney appeared. Hands reached for Angela, transferring her from his arms to the wheeled bed with practiced efficiency. Someone asked questions he barely processed. Name. Allergies. Medical history. I do not know. The admission cost him something vital. I do not know anything. I found her on the highway. She is pregnant. Please, you have to help her. They wheeled her away. A young nurse blocked his path with gentle firmness, her expression professional but not unkind. Are you family? Jeffrey hesitated. The question seemed simple but was impossibly complex. What were they? Strangers who had once been everything. Former lovers who had burned so bright they had set each other ablaze. Two people who had shared a bed and dreams and devastating heartbreak, but never legal documentation. Two people separated by 14 months of silence and a pregnancy he knew nothing about. I am the father. The words came not from him, but from behind him. Angela's voice, weak but determined, cutting through the chaos of the emergency room. She had opened her eyes. She was looking at him with an expression he could not decipher. He is the father of my child. The words hit Jeffrey like a physical blow. He staggered slightly, caught himself against the wall, and watched as she was wheeled through double doors that swung shut with terrible finality. The waiting room became his prison. Plastic chairs too small for his frame. Fluorescent lights that buzzed with a frequency that seemed designed to irritate. The smell of antiseptic and anxiety mingling in air that felt recycled, stale, exhausted. Jeffrey sat in the corner, his $4,000 suit wrinkled beyond repair, his usually perfect hair disheveled from running his hands through it repeatedly. He looked nothing like the man who graced magazine covers and commanded boardrooms. He looked like exactly what he was, a man whose carefully constructed world had just collapsed. He is the father of my child. The words replayed on an endless loop. Angela's voice, Angela's eyes, Angela's pregnant body being wheeled away while he stood paralyzed by shock. The math tortured him. 14 months since she left. He remembered the exact date. March 15th, the night of the Pemberton estate party. The night everything had fallen apart for reasons he had spent 14 months refusing to examine honestly. 7 months pregnant. If she was 7 months pregnant now, that meant conception was approximately 7 months ago. That meant, no. He did the calculation again, and again, and again. If she had been exactly 2 months pregnant when she left, the timeline worked. If she had discovered the pregnancy shortly after leaving, the timeline worked. If she had been carrying his child when she walked out of his life and never told him, the timeline worked. Jeffrey dropped his head into his hands. Around him, the waiting room continued its quiet drama. An elderly couple holding hands while waiting for news about someone they loved. A mother trying to comfort a child with a broken arm. A young man pacing by the vending machines, his phone pressed to his ear as he relayed information to unseen family members. Normal people with normal problems. None of them sitting in plastic chairs while their entire understanding of the past 14 months crumbled around them. She had known. Or had she? Maybe she had not known when she left. Maybe she had discovered it afterward, alone in wherever she had run to, staring at a positive test while the father of her child was 1,000 miles away, oblivious and prideful, and convinced he had done nothing wrong. Why had she not told him? The question led to other questions. Where had she been? How had she survived? Who had taken care of her? Why was she walking alone on a highway, 7 months pregnant, in the brutal summer heat? What had he done to her? The last question was the one he had been avoiding for 14 months. Not what had she done to him by leaving. Not how dare she disappear without explanation. But what had he done to her that made leaving seem like her only option? He had told himself she was overreacting. He had told himself she would come back when she calmed down. He had told himself that whatever she thought she heard at that party was a misunderstanding, an overreaction, the kind of emotional response he had never been able to understand. He had told himself a lot of things. None of them had been true. 90 minutes passed like 90 years. Jeffrey counted ceiling tiles. He counted footsteps. He counted heartbeats, his own thundering in his chest, a rhythm that spelled out her name with every pulse. Angela. 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 When the double doors finally opened and a woman in a white coat emerged, Jeffrey was on his feet before she could scan the room. Mr. Murphy, is she okay? The question erupted from him, desperate and uncontrolled. Is the baby? Are they both? Dr. Pamela Harrison had seen every variety of human drama in her 20 years of emergency medicine. Billionaires in wrinkled suits, frantic with worry over women they clearly had complicated histories with, were not even in her top 10 unusual cases. But something about the raw fear in this man's eyes touched her professional composure. She is stable. The doctor watched relief crash over his features like a wave. Severely dehydrated, exhausted, and approximately 7 months pregnant. We have her on IV fluids. Her vitals are improving. The baby appears healthy, but we are monitoring closely. Can I see her? She is asking for you. Dr. Harrison paused, her eyes assessing him with the precision of someone accustomed to delivering difficult news. She has been through a lot, Mr. Murphy. Whatever conversation you're about to have, I would suggest having it gently. The warning hung in the air between them. Jeffrey nodded, understanding that gentle might be the hardest thing he had ever attempted. Room 7. Down the hall to your left. He walked toward the room on legs that felt unsteady, his heart pounding with each step that brought him closer to answers he was not sure he wanted. The door was closed. He stood outside it for a moment, gathering courage he did not feel. Then he opened it. Angela was sitting up in the hospital bed when he entered. And 4 drip attached to her arm, a monitor displaying the steady rhythm of 2 heartbeats, hers and the baby's. She looked diminished somehow, smaller than he remembered, the vibrant woman who had lit up his life reduced to pale skin and shadows under eyes that had seen too much. But those eyes, when they met his, were the same. Fierce, guarded, carrying depths he had never fully explored. Angela. Her name emerged like a confession. Jeffrey. Her voice was steady despite everything. I suppose you have questions. He crossed to the chair beside her bed and sat heavily, the weight of 14 months crashing down on him. For a long moment he simply looked at her. The swell of her belly beneath the hospital gown. The evidence of everything she had carried alone. Is it my child? He heard the words leave his mouth and knew immediately they were wrong. Knew, even as they hung in the air, that he had just confirmed every fear she had ever had about him. Knew that whatever fragile possibility existed for conversation, for understanding, for redemption, he had just shattered it with 4 words he could not take back. Angela's expression cycled through emotions faster than he could track. Hurt, anger, exhaustion, and finally, something that looked terrifyingly like resignation. You really have to ask me that. Her voice was flat in a way that cut deeper than screaming. After everything. I need to know. He tried to explain, tried to make her understand. You left without a word. You disappeared for 14 months. I find you collapsed on a highway, pregnant, and I'm supposed to just accept. You are supposed to know me. Angela cut him off, her composure cracking for the first time. You are supposed to trust me. We were together for 2 years, Jeffrey. 2 years of my life I gave to you. And this, she gestured at the space between them. This doubt, this suspicion, this is why I left. This is why I kept the truth from you. Because I knew deep down that when it mattered most, you would not believe me. That is not fair. He heard the desperation in his own voice. I am sitting here in shock. You cannot expect me to just accept. I do not expect anything from you anymore. Angela's words were quiet and devastating. I stopped expecting things from you the night you made it clear I was temporary. The night you stood there while another woman called me a distraction and you said nothing. Nothing, Jeffrey. You did not defend me. You did not correct her. You let her say those things, and then you told me I was overreacting when I confronted you about it. The memory he had been running from for 14 months finally caught him. The Pemberton estate party, champagne flowing, power players circling, and Vivian Holt, predatory in her red dress, leaning close to whisper things about Angela that Jeffrey should have shut down immediately. She is charming, Jeffrey, but you and I both know she is temporary. Someone like Angela, she is a distraction, not a destination. When you are ready to be serious about your future, about strategic alliances that actually matter, you know where to find me. And he had said nothing. He had heard the words. He had processed them. He had felt something like discomfort, perhaps even disagreement. But he had said nothing. Because Vivian was connected. Because alienating her meant complications. Because pragmatism had always been his guiding principle, even when pragmatism destroyed people he claimed to love. Angela had been watching from across the room. She had seen his silence. She had interpreted it correctly. And when she confronted him later that night, when she asked him why he had not defended her, why he had let another woman call her temporary without a single word of objection, he had handled it catastrophically. You are overreacting, Angela. These are business relationships. This is how my world works. You do not understand. Then explain it to me, she had demanded. Explain how someone who loves me can hear me called temporary and not say a single word. It does not mean anything about us. He had dismissed her concerns with pragmatic certainty. You are being sensitive. I am being clear, she had replied, and he should have heard the finality in her voice. I am finally seeing clearly. She had left that night. No note, no explanation, just absence where presence had been, silence where her laughter had filled his apartment. And he had convinced himself he had done nothing wrong. I was wrong. Jeffrey said now, in the hospital room, 14 months too late. Everything I said that night was wrong. Every assumption, every dismissal, every moment I made you feel like you were less than essential. I have known it for 14 months. I have regretted it every single day. Regret does not change anything. Angela replied. Regret did not keep me warm in a studio apartment I could barely afford. Regret did not hold my hair back when morning sickness lasted all day for 3 months. Regret did not sit with me in a free clinic 2 towns away because I could not afford a real doctor. Your regret is convenient, Jeffrey. It costs you nothing. Tell me. He leaned forward, desperate to understand. Tell me everything that happened. Tell me what you went through. Why? So you can feel guilty. So you can catalog my suffering and assign yourself appropriate penance. I do not need your guilt, Jeffrey. I do not need anything from you. You said I was the father. He reminded her. Back in the emergency room. You told them I was the father. Because you are. Angela's hand moved to her belly, protective and unconscious. Biologically, you are. But fatherhood is more than genetics. Fatherhood is showing up. Fatherhood is being present. Fatherhood is prioritizing your child above your comfort, your convenience, your precious strategic alliances. She took a breath, steadying herself. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after I left you. I was alone in a city where I knew no one, staring at a positive test, and my entire world collapsed around me. I considered every option: termination, adoption, reaching out to you. Each option examined, each one discarded for different reasons. Why not reach out? Jeffrey asked. I would have. Would have what? Angela challenged. Sent money to make the problem go away. Hired lawyers to negotiate terms. Shown up when convenient and disappeared when work called. I would have been there. Like you were there the night Vivian called me temporary. Like you were there when I needed you to choose me over comfort. Your track record does not support your hypothetical heroism, Jeffrey. The words landed like blows because they were accurate. Jeffrey absorbed them in silence, watching Angela's hand trace circles on her belly, watching the monitors display 2 heartbeats that represented everything he had almost destroyed. When I felt the first flutter of movement, Angela continued, her voice softer now, almost talking to herself. I knew I was keeping this baby. Not to hurt you, not to hide something from you, but because this child was mine. Someone who would love me just because I existed. Someone I could build a life with. Someone who would not look at me like a distraction or a temporary convenience. I never thought you were, but you acted like it. Angela finally looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw the devastation behind her strength. Actions, Jeffrey, not intentions, not feelings, actions. You never defended me to your colleagues. You never corrected people who assumed I was a phase. You kept me separate from your real life, the board meetings and business dinners and strategic alliances, like I was someone to enjoy in private, but not acknowledge publicly. I thought I was protecting you. The excuse sounded hollow even as he spoke it. My world is brutal. The scrutiny, the jealousy, the way people tear apart anyone connected to wealth. I thought keeping you separate was keeping you safe. You thought wrong, Angela replied. You made me feel like a secret, like something to be ashamed of. And when Vivian confirmed my worst fears, when she said out loud what I had suspected all along, you did nothing to prove her wrong. So I left. And I survived without you, and I built a life that was mine. The hospital room fell silent except for the beeping monitors. 2 heartbeats, mother and child. A family that existed entirely without him. What do you want from me? Jeffrey finally asked. What can I do? I do not know yet, Angela admitted. An hour ago I was walking toward a job interview, trying to figure out how to feed my daughter on minimum wage. Now you are here, and everything is complicated again. Daughter. The word caught in his throat. It is a girl. It is a girl. Angela confirmed, and something that might have been softness flickered across her features. She kicks constantly. She already has opinions about everything. She is stubborn and fierce and refuses to follow any pattern or schedule. She sounds like you. She sounds like both of us, Angela corrected. Your stubbornness, my survival instinct. She is going to be a force. Jeffrey felt tears threatening, an experience so foreign he almost did not recognize it. He had not cried since he was 12 years old, since his father had explained that emotion was weakness, and Murphy men did not show weakness. But sitting in this hospital room, learning about a daughter he had almost never known, listening to the heartbeat of a child created from his carelessness and Angela's courage, something cracked inside him. Can I? He hesitated. Can I be part of this? Not for appearances or damage control. Can I actually be her father? Angela studied him with eyes that had learned to see through pretense. I do not know, she said honestly. You might want that right now, in this moment, with shock making everything feel urgent and important. But fatherhood is not a boardroom, Jeffrey. You cannot delegate it when it gets boring. You cannot schedule it around acquisitions. This is a child who will need consistency, not a part-time parent who shows up when convenient. I understand that. Do you? Because 14 months ago, you chose convenience over commitment. You chose the woman who made your life easier over the woman who challenged you to be better. What is different now? The question hung between them, demanding an answer he was not sure he had. Jeffrey thought about the past 14 months. The empty penthouse, the 3 a.m. insomnia, the hollow victories that meant nothing because there was no one to share them with. He thought about the moment he saw Angela collapse, the terror that had seized his chest, the certainty that if she died on that highway, some essential part of him would die with her. Everything, he finally said, everything is different. 14 months ago I was building an empire and measuring success in dollars. I thought achievement could substitute for living. I was wrong about that. Wrong about so many things. Pretty words, Angela observed, but I have heard your pretty words before. They did not mean much when you were standing silent while Vivian planned my replacement. The accusation struck true. Jeffrey had no defense because there was no defense. I cannot undo what I did, he admitted. I cannot unsay what I failed to say. I cannot go back to that party and defend you the way I should have. All I can do is try to be different now. Not for you. You do not owe me anything. But for her, for our daughter, I want to be part of her life. I want to prove that I can show up and stay. Angela was quiet for a long moment, her hand still resting on her belly. The monitors beeped steadily. 2 heartbeats. 2 lives he could still be part of if she let him. Actions, she finally said. Not words. You want to prove you have changed. Prove it through what you do, not what you say. Because right now, Jeffrey Murphy, you are just another man making promises in a hospital room, and I have been let down by enough promises to last a lifetime. Tell me what you need, he said immediately. Tell me what actions would prove this to you. I need rest, Angela said. I need fluids and food and sleep. I need to not make major life decisions while attached to an IV drip in a hospital bed. This conversation is not over, but it is paused. Come back tomorrow. We can talk more when I am not recovering from heat exhaustion. It was a dismissal, but it was not a rejection. Jeffrey held on to that distinction like a lifeline. I will be here, he promised. First thing tomorrow, and every day after that if you will let me. We will see, Angela replied and closed her eyes. Jeffrey sat beside her bed for another hour, watching her sleep, watching the monitors display the heartbeats of the woman he had lost and the daughter he had almost never known. When a nurse finally suggested he find somewhere to rest himself, he walked out of the hospital in a daze. The summer heat had not broken. The sun was setting over the coastal horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt too beautiful for the devastation in his chest. He stood in the parking lot, looking at his expensive car, his wrinkled suit, his hands that had carried Angela's unconscious body, and wondered how everything had changed so completely in a single afternoon. 14 months ago, she had left him. Today, the universe had given him a second chance. The question was whether he was capable of becoming the man who deserved it. That night, Jeffrey did not sleep. He checked into the only hotel in the small coastal town, a modest establishment that had probably never hosted a billionaire before. The room was simple, clean sheets, basic furniture, a television he did not turn on. It was nothing like his penthouse, nothing like the luxury he had surrounded himself with for years, and somehow that felt appropriate. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation he and Angela had ever had, looking for signs he should have seen, warnings he should have heeded, moments where he could have chosen differently and prevented 14 months of separation and silence. There were so many. The time she had asked if he saw a future with her, and he had deflected with talk about taking things day by day. The time she had wanted to meet his family, and he had explained that his mother was difficult and his father was demanding and it was better to wait. The time she had suggested moving in together, and he had listed practical objections that were really just fear disguised as reason. He had been so careful, so controlled, so certain that keeping her at arm's length was protecting them both. Instead, he had been proving day by day that she was not essential enough to integrate into his real life, that she was someone to enjoy in private but not commit to publicly, that she was, exactly as Vivian had said, temporary. No wonder she had left. The miracle was that she had stayed as long as she did. By morning, Jeffrey had made decisions, not the kind of decisions he usually made, calculated and strategic and designed to maximize advantage. These were different. These were desperate. These were the decisions of a man who finally understood what he had been too proud to see. He was at the hospital by 7 a.m., freshly showered and wearing clothes he had purchased from a nearby store because he had nothing except the wrinkled suit from yesterday. The outfit was simple, jeans and a button-down shirt, nothing like his usual attire. He looked almost normal, almost human. Angela was awake when he arrived, eating breakfast from a tray that looked unappetizing but probably contained everything her body needed. She looked better than yesterday. More color in her cheeks, more clarity in her eyes, more of the fierce woman he had fallen in love with and failed to deserve. You came back. She said it without surprise, without pleasure, just acknowledgement. I said I would. You say a lot of things. Jeffrey accepted the jab because he deserved it. He sat in the chair beside her bed, the same chair he had occupied yesterday, and waited. I had a lot of time to think last night, Angela said after a long silence. about what happens now, about what I want, about what is actually possible given everything that has happened. And I do not have answers, she admitted. I have been surviving alone for so long that I do not know how to do anything else. The idea of letting you back into my life, even in a limited way, terrifies me. You have the power to hurt me, Jeffrey, to hurt our daughter, and I do not know if I can trust you not to. I understand. Do you? She set down her fork and looked at him directly. Because, here is the truth, I do not hate you anymore. I did for a long time. After I left, after I discovered I was pregnant, after I spent months figuring out how to survive without anyone's help, I hated you with an intensity that frightened me. You made me feel worthless, Jeffrey. You made me feel like I was not good enough for your real life, like I was someone to be enjoyed but not valued. That hatred kept me warm when nothing else did. Angela, let me finish. She held up a hand. The hatred faded eventually. It takes too much energy to hate someone, and I needed that energy for other things. For building a life, for growing our daughter, for finding reasons to get up every morning when everything felt impossible. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What replaced the hatred was something worse. Indifference. You stopped mattering to me, Jeffrey. You became just another person who had let me down, another chapter in a life full of disappointment. I made peace with raising our daughter alone. I made plans that did not include you. And now you are here, sitting in that chair, looking at me with those eyes that used to make me feel like the only person in the world. And I do not know what to do with that. Jeffrey leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. I am not asking you to forgive me, he said quietly. I am not asking you to trust me. I am asking for the chance to prove, through actions and not words, that I can be different, not the man you remember, not the man who failed you. Someone new, someone better. Why should I believe that is possible? Because I have nothing left. The admission cost him, but he made it anyway. The empire, the money, the power, none of it means anything. I have spent 14 months achieving everything I was supposed to want and feeling emptier than I have ever felt in my life. When I saw you collapse on that highway, when I thought you might die, I understood for the first time what actually mattered. And it was not acquisitions or strategic alliances or anything I can put on a balance sheet. He met her eyes. It was you. It has always been you. I was just too afraid to admit it. Angela stared at him for a long moment. He could see her processing, evaluating, the same keen intelligence that had first attracted him now being applied to assessing his sincerity. Here is what is going to happen, she finally said. I am being discharged tomorrow. I have a place to stay, a small house that belonged to my grandmother in a town about 3 hours from here. It is not much, but it is mine. Okay, you are not invited to come with me. The words landed like a blow, but Jeffrey forced himself to accept them. I understand. But, Angela continued, and the word gave him hope. You can visit, under specific conditions. I will decide when and for how long. You will not push for more than I am willing to give. You will prove yourself through sustained action over time, not grand gestures or expensive gifts. Anything. He agreed immediately. Whatever you need. Whatever makes you feel safe. And if you let me down, if you disappear when things get difficult, if you choose convenience over commitment even once, you will never see our daughter again. I will make sure of it. The threat was real. Jeffrey could see it in her eyes. Angela had been surviving on her own for 14 months. She had built a life without him. She did not need him, and that gave her all the power. I will not let you down, he promised. We will see, Angela replied, echoing her words from the night before. We will see. The next morning, Angela was discharged from the hospital with instructions to rest, stay hydrated, and follow up with her regular obstetrician. Jeffrey paid the bill over her protests, arguing that it was the least he could do, and she should save her money for things she actually needed. She let him, which felt like a small victory. He drove her to her grandmother's house, a modest structure in a small town where everyone seemed to know everyone else. The house needed work. The paint was peeling. The garden was overgrown, but it was solid and it was hers, and there was something peaceful about the quiet street lined with mature trees. This is home, Angela said as they pulled into the driveway. It is perfect, Jeffrey replied, and meant it. He helped her inside, carrying her small bag of belongings, looking around at the life she had built without him. family photos on the walls, books stacked on every available surface, a nursery in progress, painted pale yellow with a crib that still needed assembly. "You have been busy," he observed. "Survival keeps you busy." Angela settled onto a worn but comfortable couch. "The nursery is not done. I kept running out of time and money. The crib has been sitting in its box for 3 weeks. I could help." Jeffrey offered. "Put it together. Whatever else you need." Angela studied him for a long moment. "Fine," she said finally. "You can stay today. Help with the nursery. We will see how that goes." It was a test. Jeffrey understood that. She was watching to see if he would roll up his sleeves and do actual work, or if he would find an excuse to delegate, to hire someone else, to avoid the unglamorous reality of manual labor. He spent the next 6 hours assembling furniture. The crib instructions were in 3 languages, none of them entirely clear. The pieces did not fit together the way they appeared in the diagrams. Jeffrey's expensive education had not prepared him for Allen wrenches and wooden dowels and instructions that assumed knowledge he did not possess. But he figured it out. He made mistakes and corrected them. He consulted YouTube videos on his phone. He asked Angela for help when he was genuinely stuck, and she offered guidance without mockery. By evening, the crib was assembled. The changing table was functional. The nursery looked like a place where a child could be welcomed into the world. "Not bad," Angela admitted, standing in the doorway surveying the work. "For a billionaire who has probably never assembled anything in his life." "I'm a fast learner," Jeffrey replied. "Apparently." They ordered pizza for dinner because neither of them had the energy to cook. They sat on her grandmother's old couch, eating from the box like they used to in the early days of their relationship, before penthouse living and catered events and all the trappings of wealth that had slowly created distance between them. "This is nice," Jeffrey said quietly. "It is just pizza. That is what makes it nice." Angela looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You are different," she observed. "Not just saying different things. Actually different. I do not know what to do with that." "You do not have to do anything with it yet," Jeffrey replied. "Just let me keep showing up. Let me prove that this is real." She did not respond, but she did not tell him to leave either. The weeks that followed established a careful routine. Jeffrey stayed in a nearby hotel because Angela was not ready for him and her space full time. He visited daily, always calling first, always respecting the boundaries she set. He learned the rhythms of her life. Morning tea, decaf because of the pregnancy. Reading in the afternoon, classics mixed with contemporary fiction. Evening walks when the heat was not too oppressive, her hand resting on her belly as their daughter kicked and shifted. He learned about her months alone. The clinic job that had barely paid enough, the free prenatal care 2 towns over, the endless calculus of poverty, deciding between food and vitamins, between rent and gas, between present needs and future security. Each story added weight to his guilt. Each detail painted a picture of survival he had never imagined and she had never deserved. "I applied for 43 jobs before I got the clinic position," Angela told him one afternoon. "I was 3 months pregnant, showing just enough that employers could tell, and every interview ended the same way. 'We will be in touch.' They were never in touch. You should not have had to do any of that," Jeffrey said. "I should have been there. But you were not." "No," he agreed. "I was not." The truth sat between them, undeniable and uncomfortable. Angela did not soften it, and Jeffrey did not try to deflect from it. They were building something new on a foundation of honesty, even when the honesty hurt. One evening, about 3 weeks after the highway collapse, Angela asked a question she had been avoiding. "Why did you never look for me?" The question struck Jeffrey silent. He had asked himself the same thing countless times during his sleepless nights. "I told myself you needed space," he finally admitted. "I told myself you would come back when you calmed down. I told myself that looking for you would be desperate, would prove I was wrong, would mean acknowledging things I was not ready to acknowledge. And now I understand that not looking for you was the most cowardly thing I have ever done. I was so afraid of being wrong that I let you disappear. I let you struggle alone. I let our daughter grow without her father's knowledge. All because my pride was more important than your well-being." Angela absorbed this in silence. "I wanted you to look for me," she admitted quietly. "In the beginning, I told myself I was glad you did not, that your absence proved you never really loved me. But the truth is, I was waiting. For Weeks after I left, every time the phone rang, every time someone knocked on the door, I hoped it was you. The revelation gutted him. I am so sorry. The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. Angela, I am more sorry than I know how to express. Sorry does not change anything. No, he agreed, but maybe I can. Maybe, she replied, and it was the closest to hope either of them had expressed. The call came at 2 in the morning, 3 weeks before Angela's due date. Her water had broken. Jeffrey was at her house within minutes, his hands shaking as he helped her to the car. The hospital was 30 minutes away. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every minute stretched into years. Are you okay? He kept asking. Is the baby okay? What do you need? I need you to stop panicking and drive. Angela gritted through a contraction. That is what I need. He drove. The hospital was ready for them. Angela had pre-registered weeks ago, her emergency contacts updated to include Jeffrey despite her reservations. She was wheeled to labor and delivery while he followed, useless and terrified and desperately wanting to help. 22 hours of labor. 22 hours of Angela's strength and Jeffrey's helplessness. He held her hand when she let him. He got ice chips and adjusted pillows and called nurses when the monitors showed anything concerning. He was there, present, witnessing every moment of the struggle to bring their daughter into the world. When complications arose, when the monitors showed distress and doctors rushed in with urgent efficiency, Jeffrey felt terror like he had never known. This was not something he could fix with money or influence or strategic thinking. This was biology and chance, and forces entirely beyond his control. The cesarean section happened quickly. Angela was wheeled away while Jeffrey waited in the hallway, praying to a God he was not sure he believed in, bargaining with the universe for the lives of the two people who had become everything to him. And then a cry, small, fierce, announcing arrival like a declaration of independence. Jeffrey watched through the window of the operating room as his daughter was lifted into the world, tiny and red and perfect, screaming her objection to the indignity of birth. Alive! Angela was crying when they led him into the room, but her tears were joy, not sorrow. Their daughter was placed on her chest, skin to skin, and something in Angela's face transformed into something Jeffrey had never seen before. Pure, unconditional, devastating love. She is perfect, he whispered, standing beside them, touching his daughter's tiny hand with a finger that looked enormous in comparison. She is. Angela agreed. She is absolutely perfect. They named her Marisol, sea and sun, representing the coast where they had found each other again, representing the light they were both learning to embrace. In that hospital room, with his daughter's heartbeat strong and his daughter's mother looking at him with something that might eventually become trust, Jeffrey understood what he had been missing his entire life. Not success, not achievement, not empire building. This, family, connection, the messy, terrifying, beautiful reality of loving people who needed you to show up, not just succeed. I love you, he said to Angela, surprising them both. I know I have no right to say that. I know I have not earned it. But I love you. I have always loved you. I was just too broken to know how to show it. Angela looked at him for a long moment, their daughter between them, the beeping monitors the only sound. I know, she finally said. I have always known. That was what made it hurt so much when you failed me. I will not fail you again. He promised. Either of you. We will see, Angela replied, but her voice was softer now. We will see. The first weeks of Marisol's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Angela had read books about motherhood, had prepared as much as anyone could prepare for the complete restructuring of existence that comes with a newborn. But nothing had truly readied her for the reality of it. The constant vigilance, the bone-deep exhaustion, the way her heart seemed to exist outside her body now, wrapped in a 7-pound bundle of need and potential. Jeffrey stayed, not in her house. That boundary remained firm despite his obvious desire to cross it. He stayed in the hotel, but he was at her door every morning by 7, coffee in hand, ready for whatever the day required. He changed diapers without complaint. He walked the floors at 3 a.m. when Marisol refused to sleep. He learned to prepare bottles and sanitize equipment and do laundry that seemed to multiply exponentially. He did everything wrong at first. The diapers leaked. The bottles were too hot or too cold. He held Marisol with the uncertain grip of someone afraid of breaking something precious. But he kept trying. He kept showing up. He kept proving, day after day, that this was not a phase or a performance. "You are getting better at this," Angela observed one morning, watching him successfully calm a crying Marisol with a technique he had learned from a YouTube video about infant soothing. "I have a good teacher," Jeffrey replied, not looking up from the baby in his arms. "Several good teachers, actually. You, the internet, and this tiny person who lets me know immediately when I am doing something wrong. She is not subtle about her opinions. No, she is not." Jeffrey smiled down at his daughter, a genuine smile that transformed his face into something Angela barely recognized. "She knows what she wants and she demands it without apology. I respect that. She gets it from both of us." The observation hung in the air between them, an acknowledgement of connection neither was quite ready to fully examine. Days turned into weeks. The routine became familiar. Jeffrey would arrive in the morning, Angela would hand off the baby and collapse into sleep for a few hours, and when she woke, she would find him competently managing whatever crisis had arisen in her absence. Feeding, schedules, laundry mountains, grocery runs. He handled it all with the same determination he had once applied to hostile takeovers and market dominance. But this was different. Angela could see it in the way he looked at Marisol, the way his entire demeanor softened when he held her. This was not strategy or acquisition. This was love, raw and transformative and completely beyond his control. One night, about 6 weeks after Marisol's birth, Angela found Jeffrey asleep in the rocking chair, the baby equally asleep on his chest. Both of them breathing in synchronized rhythm, both of them peaceful in a way that made Angela's heart ache with something she was afraid to name. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching them. The billionaire who had once measured success in zeros. The infant who measured only hunger and comfort and the presence of people who loved her. Together, they looked like a picture from a life Angela had stopped believing was possible. "You should take a photo." Jeffrey's voice startled her. His eyes were still closed, but a slight smile curved his lips. "I thought you were asleep." "I was." He opened his eyes now, meeting her gaze across the dim room. "But I felt you watching. How long have you been standing there?" "A few minutes." "See anything you like?" The question was light, teasing almost, but there was vulnerability beneath it. Angela recognized the man who was asking if he was doing well enough, if he was becoming someone she could trust, if there was hope for something beyond co-parenting and careful boundaries. "I see someone who keeps showing up," she admitted quietly. "Someone who is trying harder than I thought possible. Is it enough? I do not know yet." The honest answer landed between them. Jeffrey nodded slowly, accepting it without argument. "I will keep trying until it is." He said simply, "However long that takes." Angela did not respond, but she also did not leave. She sat down on the couch across from him, watching him hold their daughter, allowing herself to exist in the same space without the usual tension that accompanied their interactions. It was progress. Small, fragile, easily broken, but progress nonetheless. 3 months after Marisol's birth, Jeffrey made an announcement. They were having breakfast at Angela's kitchen table, a routine that had become comfortable enough that neither of them questioned it anymore. Marisol was in her bouncer, content after her morning feeding, making the small sounds that indicated she was observing the world with the intensity of someone cataloging everything for future reference. "I have been restructuring my company," Jeffrey said, setting down his coffee cup, "delegating more responsibilities to my executive team, moving operations around so that I do not need to be in New York constantly." Angela looked up from her toast. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I have been looking at properties. Here, in this area. Something where I could be close to you and Marisol, not intruding on your space, but available, present, part of daily life instead of scheduled visits." The announcement landed with weight Angela was not prepared for. She had grown accustomed to Jeffrey's presence, had stopped bracing for his departure, had begun to believe that maybe this transformation was real. But relocating, restructuring a billion-dollar empire, that was something else entirely. "Jeffrey, you cannot uproot your entire life." "I am not uprooting my life," he replied steadily. "I am finally building one. A real one. Everything I had in New York was infrastructure for success that never made me happy. The penthouse I barely slept in. The office I spent too many hours in. The social obligations that felt mandatory rather than meaningful. None of it matters compared to being here with you and Marisol. You have responsibilities, a company, people who depend on you. And I can fulfill those responsibilities from anywhere. This is not the 20th century. I do not need to be physically present in Manhattan to run my business. What I need to be physically present for is my daughter's first words, her first steps, the moments that will not wait for quarterly reports. Angela was silent for a long moment, processing the implications of what he was proposing. This is a big decision. She finally said, "What if it does not work out? What if you resent me for making you change your life? You did not make me do anything." Jeffrey leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Angela, I chose this. I chose to be here. I chose to restructure my company. I chose to prioritize fatherhood over whatever I was doing before. If there is resentment, it will be directed at myself for not making these choices sooner, for wasting years chasing things that did not matter while letting the things that did matter slip away. What about when it gets hard?" Angela pressed. "When Marisol is crying at 3 a.m. and you have a board meeting at 7. When the novelty wears off and you realize that daily parenting is boring and repetitive and exhausting. What then? Then I will be exhausted and bored and I will do it anyway. Because that is what parents do. That is what partners do. They show up when it is hard. They stay when staying is inconvenient. I am learning that lesson late, but I am learning it." The conviction in his voice was unmistakable. Angela studied his face, looking for cracks in the certainty, waiting for the mask to slip. But all she saw was a man who had made a decision and intended to follow through. "I need time," she said finally, "to think about what this means, what it changes. Take all the time you need." Jeffrey replied, "I am not going anywhere." The words had become his refrain. A promise repeated so often it was starting to feel like truth. Jeffrey found a house 4 miles from Angela's grandmother's place. A craftsman-style home on a quiet street with a backyard big enough for a child to play in someday. He bought it outright, no mortgage, then spent the next month making it into something that felt like home rather than a real estate investment. Angela visited once during the renovation. She told herself it was to see how Marisol would handle the car seat on the short drive. She told herself it was practical assessment rather than curiosity. But walking through the rooms Jeffrey was transforming, she felt something shift inside her. The nursery was painted the same pale yellow as the one in her grandmother's house. The furniture was almost identical to what they had assembled together. There was a reading nook by the window, sized for an adult to sit with a child, and bookshelves already lined with children's books. "This is for when she stays over," Jeffrey explained, watching Angela take in the details. "Eventually, when you are comfortable with that, no pressure, no timeline. You built her a nursery. I built her a home," he corrected gently. "A place where she will always belong. A place where her father lives and loves her and wants her present. Whether she is here every day or once a month, she will know she has a room. She will know she is wanted." Angela felt tears threatening and blinked them back. The gesture was overwhelming in its thoughtfulness. Not a grand display of wealth, though clearly money had been spent. Something more intimate than that. A space created specifically for a child who was still too young to know what any of it meant. "Jeffrey," she started, then stopped. She did not know what she wanted to say. "Thank you" seemed inadequate. "I love you" seemed premature. Everything between them was still fragile, still being constructed one careful day at a time. "You do not have to say anything," he said, reading her expression. "Just know that this is what I want. A life that includes our daughter. A life that includes you, if you will ever let it. A life that is about more than quarterly earnings and market share." Angela nodded slowly. She walked through the rest of the house in silence. The kitchen designed for family dinners. The living room with a fireplace and space for movie nights. The master bedroom that felt empty, waiting for someone to fill it with purpose. It was a house built for hope, for possibility. For the family Jeffrey was trying to become worthy of joining. 6 months after Marisol's birth, Angela agreed to let Jeffrey take her overnight. It was the biggest test yet. The most significant evidence of trust Angela had offered. She packed a bag with everything Marisol could possibly need, and several things she probably would not. She wrote instructions that spanned 3 pages. She checked and double-checked the car seat installation until Jeffrey gently pointed out that she had done it correctly the first time. "Call me if anything happens," Angela said, standing in Jeffrey's doorway, reluctant to actually leave. "Anything at all. If she cries and you cannot figure out why. If she will not sleep. If you feel overwhelmed, I will call." Jeffrey promised. "But we are going to be fine. You deserve a night of uninterrupted sleep. Let me give you that." Angela looked at her daughter, contentedly examining Jeffrey's face with the intensity of someone memorizing important information. "Be good for Daddy," she said softly. It was the first time she had used the word in Jeffrey's presence. The first time she had acknowledged out loud what Marisol would eventually call him. Jeffrey's face transformed with an emotion too large to name. "She will be perfect," he said, his voice thick. "I promise." Angela left. She drove back to her grandmother's house. She walked through the silent rooms, listening to the absence of infant sounds. She lay down in her bed, closed her eyes, and tried to remember what uninterrupted sleep felt like. Instead, she stared at the ceiling for 3 hours, checking her phone every 15 minutes, waiting for the call that never came. At 2 a.m., unable to stand the silence any longer, she finally called Jeffrey. He answered on the first ring. "I was wondering when you would call." His voice was quiet, the low tone of someone trying not to wake a sleeping baby. "She went down about an hour ago. Fed, changed, rocked until she passed out on my shoulder. I have not put her in the crib yet because I am afraid of waking her." "You can put her down," Angela said. "She will stay asleep if you are gentle." "I know. He paused. "I like holding her. Is that strange? She is so small, and she trusts me completely, and I do not want to let go of that. Even to put her in a crib 3 feet away." Angela felt something crack inside her. The wall she had built so carefully, the barrier that protected her from hoping for too much, developed another fissure. "That is not strange," she said quietly. "That is exactly how I felt the first time I held her. Like I wanted to keep her close forever, like the rest of the world did not exist. Does that feeling ever go away?" "No," Angela admitted. "It changes. It expands, but it never goes away. She will be 20 years old, and you will still want to hold her close and protect her from everything." "Good," Jeffrey said. "I want that. I want to feel this for the rest of my life." They stayed on the phone for another hour, not talking about anything important, just existing in the same space despite the miles between them. When Angela finally fell asleep, her phone was still pressed to her ear, Jeffrey's breathing on the other end a strange sort of lullaby. In the morning, she drove to his house earlier than planned. She found them in the kitchen, Jeffrey making breakfast one-handed while Marisol observed from her carrier on the counter. "You survived," Angela said from the doorway. "We thrived," Jeffrey corrected with a tired smile. "She only woke up twice. I only panicked once. Overall, I'm calling it a success. Only once." There was a moment around 4 a.m. when she was making this sound I had never heard before. I thought something was seriously wrong. Turns out she was just testing out her vocal range. Apparently our daughter is going to be a singer, or a screamer, maybe both. Jeffrey flipped a pancake with the ease of someone who had been practicing. "Hungry. I made extra." Angela hesitated. Breakfast together felt different than the morning coffee routine at her house. This was his space, his table, his attempt at domesticity. Accepting the invitation meant something more than accepting food. "Yes," she said finally. "I am hungry." She sat at his table. She ate his pancakes. She watched him with their daughter, competent and comfortable, in a way that would have been impossible to imagine 6 months ago. And she let herself wonder, for the first time, whether maybe this could actually work. "Now I need to pause and speak directly to you. We are halfway through this story, and if you are still here, if you have invested this time in Angela and Jeffrey's journey, then something about their struggle resonates with you. Maybe you have been Angela, hurt so deeply by someone that trust feels impossible, building walls so high that even when someone proves themselves, you cannot quite believe it is real. Maybe you have been Jeffrey, realizing too late that you destroyed something precious, trying to prove you have changed while carrying the weight of knowing how badly you failed. Maybe you are just someone who wonders if second chances are real, if people can truly transform, if broken things can become foundations for something stronger than what existed before. This is what we explore at Mr. Dawson Stories. Not fairy tales, not perfect people with perfect love, real humans navigating impossible situations, making mistakes and choosing every day whether to try again or give up. If this story is touching something inside you, I need you to do something right now. Hit that like button. Not for me, for everyone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that growth is possible, that the person who hurt you most might actually be capable of becoming someone new. Drop a comment telling me your story. Have you been the one waiting for trust to be earned? Have you been the one trying to earn it? I want to hear from you. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the moment. Because the final part of Angela and Jeffrey's story is coming, and trust me, you will not want to miss what happens next. Now, let us return to this family that is slowly, carefully, courageously learning to believe in second chances. 9 months after Marisol's birth, Angela made a decision that surprised even herself. It started with a conversation, a late-night exchange after Marisol had finally fallen asleep, both of them exhausted from a day that had included a pediatrician visit, a minor feeding crisis, and the relentless demands of caring for a rapidly developing infant. They were sitting on Angela's couch, the television playing something neither of them was watching. The space between them was smaller than it used to be. Not touching, but not carefully avoiding contact either. Comfortable in a way that had taken months to develop. "Can I ask you something?" Angela said suddenly. "Anything." "Why me?" Jeffrey looked at her, confusion evident. "What do you mean?" "That night, at the Pemberton party, you had Vivian. You had other women who would have made your life easier, who came from the right families, who understood your world. Why were you with me in the first place?" Jeffrey was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Because you saw me," he finally said. "Not my company, not my net worth, not what I could do for you or give you. You saw the person underneath all of that, and you liked him anyway. You challenged me in ways no one else ever had. You made me want to be better, even when I was too cowardly to actually do the work. But you did not fight for me," Angela said quietly. "When it mattered, you did not fight." "No," Jeffrey agreed. "I did not, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting that moment. The rest of my life trying to make up for it. You cannot make up for it, maybe not, but I can make sure it never happens again. I can make sure that you never doubt for a single second that you are my priority, that you and Marisol are the most important things in my life." "Words," Angela said, though her voice was softer than before. "I know." Jeffrey turned to face her fully. "But what else do I have? I cannot undo the past. I cannot unsay the things I failed to say. All I can do is use words now, backed by actions, hoping that eventually the combination will be enough. Enough for what? Enough for you to let me in. Really let me in. Not as Marisol's father, not as the man who shows up to help with childcare, as someone you trust with your heart again." The directness of it stole Angela's breath. They had been dancing around this conversation for months, neither willing to address the elephant in every room they shared. The love that had never completely died. The possibility of something beyond co-parenting. "I am scared," Angela admitted. The words came out before she could stop them. "I am terrified that if I let myself love you again, you will prove that I was wrong to trust you. I will be worse off than before because I will have given you a second chance and watched you waste it." "That is a reasonable fear," Jeffrey said, "given what I did, given how badly I failed you. So what do I do with it?" "You keep watching," Jeffrey said simply. "You keep letting me prove myself. And maybe, eventually, the evidence outweighs the fear. How long will that take?" "As long as it takes. I told you. I am not going anywhere." The silence stretched between them, charged with everything unsaid. Angela looked at this man who had transformed himself over the past 9 months, who had shown up every single day, who had never complained, never made excuses, never suggested that he had done enough. "Ask me again," she said quietly. "Ask you what? What you asked at the hospital. The first question you asked when you found out I was pregnant." Jeffrey's face flickered with something like pain. He understood what she was offering, a chance to do it differently, to prove that he had learned. "I do not need to ask," he said firmly. "I know Marisol is mine. I know she is ours. I know that you would never lie to me about something so important. I know who you are, Angela. I always did. I was just too afraid to act like it." The answer broke something loose in Angela's chest. A dam she had been reinforcing for 14 months finally developed a crack too large to ignore. "I have been so angry," she whispered. "For so long. It was the only thing that kept me going in the beginning, the only thing that gave me strength to build a life without you. But I am tired of being angry, Jeffrey. It takes so much energy to maintain, and I do not have energy to spare anymore." "Then stop," Jeffrey said gently. "Not for me. For yourself. Because you deserve peace. You deserve to live without carrying that weight. It is not that simple. I know. But nothing about this has been simple. And yet, here we are anyway. 9 months into something that works. 9 months of proving that complicated does not mean impossible. Angela felt tears sliding down her cheeks, the first she had shed in front of him since the hospital. She'd been so careful to maintain her composure, to never let him see how deeply he had affected her. But she was tired of being careful, tired of holding everything inside. I loved you so much. The confession emerged raw and unprotected. When I left, when I found out I was pregnant, when I had to figure out how to survive alone. Through all of it, I still loved you. And I hated myself for that. I hated that you still had power over my heart when you had proven you did not deserve it. And now I do not know what I feel. Angela wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Everything is confused. You have been wonderful. Perfect, really. But I cannot separate the man you are now from the man who hurt me. They exist in the same body. They share the same face. Jeffrey reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he took her hand in his. They are not the same man, he said quietly. The man who hurt you was a coward. He was so focused on protecting himself that he failed to protect you. He prioritized comfort over courage, appearances over authenticity. He does not exist anymore, not in any way that matters. How can you be sure? Because I killed him, Jeffrey said simply. The moment I saw you on that highway, the moment I understood what I had lost, what I had thrown away through my own arrogance, something inside me died, and something new had to grow in its place, something better. Someone worthy of being Marisol's father, and maybe, eventually, worthy of being your partner again. Angela looked at their joined hands. His thumb was tracing gentle circles on her skin, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. I want to believe you, she said. Then try, Jeffrey replied. Not blind faith, not ignoring the past, but try to let the evidence speak for itself. 9 months of showing up. 9 months of prioritizing you and Marisol above everything else. 9 months of becoming someone I never thought I could be. And if I try and it breaks me again, then I will have failed both of us. But Angela, what is the alternative? Living in fear forever. Never allowing yourself to be happy, because happiness requires risk. You have already survived the worst thing I could do to you. You survived it and built a life and raised our daughter. You are not fragile. You are the strongest person I have ever known. Strong enough to take a chance on something that might be beautiful. The words settled over her like a blanket. Not solving anything, but providing warmth where there had been cold. I need more time, Angela said finally. I know. But Jeffrey, she squeezed his hand. I am not saying no anymore. I am saying, not yet. The distinction was everything. Jeffrey's face transformed with hope he was trying not to show too obviously. Not yet is enough, he said. Not yet means maybe. Maybe means possibility. I can work with possibility. For the first time in 9 months, Angela let herself smile at him. A real smile, unguarded and genuine. It changed her whole face, reminded Jeffrey of the woman he had fallen in love with before he had destroyed her trust. You are incorrigible, she said. I prefer persistent. Same thing, different framing, he replied, echoing their earlier conversation. And then, because the moment felt right, because she had not pulled away, because possibility hummed in the air between them, he leaned in slowly and pressed his lips to her forehead. Not her mouth. That would be too much, too fast, too presumptuous. Just her forehead, a benediction, a promise, a physical representation of patience and hope, and all the things he could not put into words. Thank you, he whispered against her skin. For not yet, for maybe, for letting me keep trying. Angela closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The warmth of his lips, the safety of his presence, the terrifying, exhilarating possibility of loving someone again. Do not make me regret it, she said quietly. I will not. He promised. I will spend every day making sure you do not. They stayed on the couch for another hour, not talking, just existing in the same space. Angela's head eventually found its way to Jeffrey's shoulder. His arm eventually found its way around her. Marisol slept in the next room, oblivious to the seismic shift happening between her parents. It was not resolution. It was not forgiveness. It was not happily ever after. But it was beginning. A real beginning, built on honesty and earned trust and the courage to try again. The weeks that followed felt different. The boundaries remained, but they were softer now, more permeable. Jeffrey still stayed at his own house, but the visits lasted longer. The conversations went deeper. The accidental touches became less accidental and more intentional. One afternoon, Angela called him in the middle of the day. Not about Marisol, not about logistics or schedules or any of the practical matters that usually prompted their communication. "Are you busy?" "Never too busy for you," Jeffrey replied immediately. "What do you need?" "Company," Angela admitted. "Marisol is with your mother for the afternoon." Jeffrey had introduced Marisol to his parents 2 months earlier, a carefully orchestrated meeting that had gone better than anyone expected. His mother, notorious for her coldness, had melted completely in the presence of her granddaughter. His father, demanding and critical of everything his son did, had declared Marisol perfect without qualification. The in-laws who had once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle had become enthusiastic grandparents, and Angela had found herself welcomed rather than judged. "My mother has her until when?" 6, Angela said. "That gives us approximately 5 hours of child-free existence. I thought maybe we could spend some of it together, if you want." The invitation hung in the air, weighted with implication. "I will be there in 10 minutes, Jeffrey said. He was there in 8. Angela opened the door looking more relaxed than he had ever seen her. No baby on her hip, no spit up on her shoulder, no shadows under her eyes from interrupted sleep. Just Angela in a simple sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders, beautiful in a way that stole his breath. "You look amazing," he said without thinking. "I slept for 4 consecutive hours last night," Angela replied. "It is remarkable what rest can do for a person." She stepped aside to let him in, and he realized the house was different. Candles lit, music playing softly, the evidence of intentional preparation rather than casual invitation. "What is all this?" "I decided to stop overthinking," Angela said, closing the door behind him. "I have spent 10 months analyzing everything, weighing every interaction, looking for proof that you were going to fail me. And you have not. You have been patient and present, and everything you promised to be. So I decided that maybe it was time to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and start actually living." "What does that mean?" "It means I want to have dinner with you." Angela met his eyes directly. "A real dinner, like people who are dating, like 2 adults who are figuring out whether they want to be together, not just co-parents negotiating custody." "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying, I want to try." Angela took a step closer to him. "Not fast, not reckless, but I want to see what we could be if I stopped being afraid and you kept being the man you have become." Jeffrey felt his heart expand with something too large for his chest. 9 months of showing up, of proving himself, of never pushing too hard or asking for too much. And here was the reward. Not guaranteed success, but permission to try. "I would like nothing more," he said quietly. "Good." Angela smiled, and the smile reached her eyes in a way it had not for months. "Because I made pasta, and I would hate for it to go to waste." Dinner was simple. Pasta with homemade sauce, salad, bread from the bakery down the street. But it felt like the most important meal Jeffrey had ever eaten. They sat across from each other at Angela's small kitchen table, and they talked. Not about Marisol, not about schedules or logistics or childcare responsibilities. They talked about themselves, their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future. All the conversations they had never had during their first relationship because Jeffrey had been too guarded and Angela had been too afraid of pushing. "Tell me about your childhood," Angela said. "The real version, not the sanitized summary you gave me before." Jeffrey hesitated. His childhood was not a topic he discussed willingly. It was full of expectation and disappointment, of a father who measured love and achievement, and a mother who maintained distance as a form of self-protection. "It was lonely," he admitted finally. "I had everything a child could want materially. The best schools, the best opportunities, all the advantages money could provide. But I cannot remember my father ever telling me he was proud of me. I cannot remember my mother holding me when I cried. They provided for me. They did not parent me. Is that why you struggled to connect?" Angela asked gently. "Why you kept me at arm's length?" "Probably," Jeffrey said. "I did not know any other way to be. Emotion was weakness in my house. Vulnerability was a failing. I learned to succeed by shutting down everything that might get in the way, including the ability to be truly intimate with another person. But you are different now. I am trying to be. Jeffrey met her eyes. Marisol has helped. She does not care about my walls or my defenses. She just needs me to be present and loving and available. It is teaching me things I should have learned 30 years ago. And me? Angela asked. Have I taught you anything? You taught me what I had to lose, Jeffrey said quietly. When you left, when I thought I might never see you again, I understood for the first time what actually mattered. Not the company, not the empire. You, the life we could have had, the family we could have built. I lost all of it because I was too afraid to be vulnerable, too proud to fight for what I wanted. And now I am not afraid anymore. Jeffrey reached across the table and took her hand. I have already experienced the worst-case scenario. I have already lost you once. Nothing could be more devastating than that. So there is nothing left to protect myself from. I can be completely honest, completely open, completely present, because the alternative is returning to that emptiness, and I would rather risk everything than go back to feeling nothing. Angela turned her hand in his, intertwining their fingers. I want to believe that this is real, she said. I want to believe that the man sitting across from me is who you truly are now, not a performance, not a temporary transformation, the actual you. It is, Jeffrey promised. This is who I want to be, who I am becoming, the only version of myself that makes sense anymore. Then prove it, Angela said. Keep proving it, every day, until I do not have to wonder anymore. I will, he said, for as long as it takes. They finished dinner. They talked more. They laughed in a way they had not laughed in years. And when it was time for Angela to pick up Marisol from Jeffrey's parents, they stood at the door in a moment that felt suspended in time. I should go, Angela said, not moving. You should. Jeffrey agreed, also not moving. The space between them felt electric, charged with everything they had discussed, everything they had not yet explored, everything that might be possible if they were both brave enough. Can the first kiss you? Jeffrey asked, the question coming out before he could second-guess it. I know it might be too soon. I know we said we would take this slow, but I have been wanting to ask for months, and I am tired of wondering. Angela looked at him. The man who had hurt her. The man who had spent nearly a year healing her. Both existed in the same body, but only one of them was standing in front of her now. Yes, she said simply. Jeffrey leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind. When she did not, he pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning rather than demanding. It asked permission even as it was given. It said, I have missed you and I am sorry and I want to try all at once. Angela kissed him back. And for the first time in 14 months, she let herself feel hope without immediately suppressing it. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing unsteadily. That was worth waiting for. Jeffrey said quietly. Yes, Angela agreed. It was. She left to pick up Marisol, and Jeffrey stood in her doorway watching her go. For the first time since the highway, since the hospital, since the question that had nearly destroyed everything, he allowed himself to believe that this might actually work, that he might actually deserve this second chance, that broken things could, against all odds, become whole again. The weeks following their first kiss felt like emerging from a long winter. Everything looked different, brighter, more possible. Angela caught herself smiling at random moments, humming while she did dishes, feeling something she had almost forgotten existed. Happiness. Not the desperate, fragile happiness of someone afraid to trust good things. Real happiness. The kind that comes from choosing to believe in something despite the risk. Jeffrey noticed the change. He noticed everything about her, had been cataloging her moods and expressions for nearly a year, learning to read the subtle shifts that indicated how she was feeling. The Angela who emerged after that kiss was someone he had only glimpsed before. Unguarded. Hopeful. Allowing herself to want things without immediately preparing for disappointment. They established new routines. Date nights when his parents took Marisol. Morning coffee that stretched into breakfast that stretched into lunch. Conversations that had no agenda beyond enjoying each other's company. The careful boundaries that had defined their co-parenting arrangement began to blur into something that looked remarkably like partnership. I want you to meet someone, Angela said one evening, about 6 weeks after their first kiss. They were on her couch, Marisol asleep in her crib, the television playing a movie neither of them was watching. Who? Her name is Grace, Angela said. She was my lifeline during those months alone. My grandmother's neighbor. She checked on me every day, brought me food when I was too sick to cook, drove me to doctor's appointments when I could not afford gas. Without her, I do not know how I would have survived. Jeffrey felt the familiar twist of guilt. Every story Angela shared about her time alone added weight to the burden he carried. Every detail of her struggle reminded him how completely he had failed her. "I would like to meet her," he said. "Anyone who helped you when I should have been there deserves my gratitude. She is protective," Angela warned. "She knows everything about what happened between us. She was not pleased when I told her you were back in my life. Understandable. She may give you a hard time. I can handle it," Jeffrey said. "I deserve whatever she wants to say to me. And honestly, I am glad you had someone. The thought of you going through all of that completely alone is unbearable." Angela studied his face, looking for any sign of performance or exaggeration. She found none. Just genuine remorse and genuine gratitude, tangled together in the complicated emotional landscape that defined their relationship. "Sunday dinner," she said finally. "She always makes too much food. I told her we would come this week." "We," Jeffrey repeated. "As in you, me, and Marisol. As in a family visiting a family friend." Angela said, "If you are up for it, I am up for anything that includes being referred to as part of your family." Jeffrey replied. The smile Angela gave him made everything worth it. Grace Martinez was 73 years old, barely 5 feet tall, and absolutely terrifying. She opened her door on Sunday evening with an expression that made clear Jeffrey Murphy's billions meant nothing in this household. "So," she said, looking him up and down with obvious assessment, "you are the one who broke her heart." "Yes, ma'am," Jeffrey replied. "I am. And now you want to fix it. I want to spend the rest of my life trying." Grace studied him for a long moment. Angela stood beside him, holding Marisol, watching the interaction with barely concealed amusement. She had warned Jeffrey that Grace was formidable. She had not adequately prepared him for the experience of being evaluated like a defendant awaiting verdict. "Come in," Grace finally said, stepping aside. "Dinner is ready. We will see if you are worth the food I cooked." The dinner itself was delicious. Homemade enchiladas, rice and beans, fresh tortillas that Grace had made that morning. The conversation was less comfortable. Grace asked questions that would have been intrusive from anyone else, but felt like justified interrogation from a woman who had witnessed Angela's suffering firsthand. "She cried every night for 2 months," Grace said, passing the salad bowl. "Did you know that? Every single night. I could hear her through the walls. Sometimes she would try to muffle it, but sound carries in these old houses." Jeffrey set down his fork, appetite gone. "No," he said quietly. "I did not know that. She worked double shifts at that clinic, pregnant and exhausted, because she refused to ask anyone for help. Refused to reach out to you, even when things got desperate. Too proud, too hurt, too convinced that she was better off alone." Grace Angela interjected softly. "He knows. He does not need the detailed inventory of my suffering. He needs to understand what he's asking for." Grace countered. "Forgiveness is not cheap, mija. It costs the person who gives it. He needs to understand the weight of what he is requesting." "I do understand," Jeffrey said. "Or I am trying to. Every story Angela shares, every detail of what she went through, it adds to what I owe. Not in money or resources. In commitment. In proving that the man who caused that pain does not exist anymore." "Pretty words," Grace observed. "Angela tells me you are good with pretty words." "I am," Jeffrey admitted. "I have made a career out of them, but I have also spent the past year backing them up with actions. Every day, without exception. I cannot undo what I did. I cannot give Angela back the months she spent struggling alone, but I can make sure that neither she nor Marisol ever struggles again. Not because of money, because of presence, because of showing up and staying." Grace was quiet for a moment, her sharp eyes evaluating him with the precision of someone who had seen too much of life to be fooled by surfaces. "She deserves better than you," Grace said finally. "I know. She deserves someone who never hurt her in the first place. I know that too. But for some reason she has chosen to give you another chance." Grace leaned forward, her voice dropping to something that was almost gentle. "Do not waste it. That girl has been through enough. If you add to her pain, if you prove yourself unworthy of the trust she is placing in you, I will make your life very unpleasant. Billionaire or not. Do you understand me?" "Completely," Jeffrey said. Good. Grace sat back, something shifting in her demeanor. Now eat your dinner. You are too thin. All that money and you cannot feed yourself properly. Angela laughed, the tension breaking. Jeffrey picked up his fork and resumed eating, understanding that he had just passed some kind of test. Not with flying colors, not with full approval. But he had passed, and that was enough. The drive home was quiet. Marisol had fallen asleep in her car seat, exhausted from the stimulation of a new environment and new people. Angela sat in the passenger seat, watching the dark landscape pass by through the window. "Thank you," she said finally. "For what?" For not getting defensive. For accepting what Grace said without trying to explain or justify. She needed to say those things. She has been holding them for months, waiting for the chance to confront the man who hurt me. "She loves you," Jeffrey said. "It is obvious. The way she looks at you, the way she talks about you. She loves you like family. She is family," Angela replied. "The only family I had for a long time. My parents are gone. My grandmother passed before I could tell her about Marisol. Grace became everything. Mother and friend and protector all at once. I am glad you had her," Jeffrey said again. "I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that someone was there when I should have been." "You keep saying that." "Because it is true." Angela was quiet for another moment. Then she reached over and placed her hand on his arm. "I think she likes you," she said. "She would never admit it, but I saw her watching you with Marisol. The way you held her, the way you talked to her. Grace respects people who prioritize children. I was not performing for her approval," Jeffrey said. "That is just how I am with Marisol now. That is who I have become. I know." Angela said. That is why she noticed. The car continued through the darkness, carrying them toward home, toward the life they were building together, one careful day at a time. 1 year after the highway, Angela woke on the anniversary with a strange feeling in her chest. Something between gratitude and grief. The day that had almost killed her had also saved her. The collapse that seemed like an ending had been a beginning. Everything that mattered in her life now traced back to that stretch of scorching asphalt. Jeffrey was already awake when she came downstairs, Marisol on his hip, breakfast cooking on the stove. He had arrived early, knowing what day it was, knowing she might need support navigating the complicated emotions. "How are you feeling?" he asked, handing her a cup of coffee without needing to ask how she took it. "I do not know yet," Angela admitted. "Ask me again tonight." They spent the day together. A picnic in the park where Marisol could practice walking on the grass. A visit to Grace, who had become a regular presence in all their lives. Dinner at Jeffrey's house, the one he had built for exactly this kind of family gathering. After Marisol was asleep in her nursery, the one Jeffrey had created before he even knew if he would be allowed to use it, they sat on the back porch watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. 1 year ago today, Jeffrey said quietly, "I found you on that highway and everything changed." "Everything," Angela agreed. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not taken that route? If I had gone to the office like I was supposed to? If I had never seen you fall?" "Sometimes," Angela admitted. "In my darker moments, I wonder if I would have made it to that interview. If someone else would have stopped. If Marisol and I would have been okay without you." "You would have been," Jeffrey said with certainty. "You are the strongest person I know. You would have figured it out." "Maybe," Angela said. "But I am glad I did not have to." The admission hung in the air between them, Angela acknowledging that his presence had mattered, that his transformation had made a difference, that despite everything, she was glad he had found her. "I have something for you," Jeffrey said, reaching into his pocket. "I was not sure if today was the right day. I did not want to overshadow the significance of the anniversary or make this about me instead of about you. But I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment, and I think maybe right now is it." Angela watched as he pulled out a small velvet box. Her heart rate increased immediately. The implications of small velvet boxes were not subtle. "Before you panic," Jeffrey said, reading her expression, "this is not a proposal. Not yet. I know we are not there. I know there is still work to be done, trust to be built, time that needs to pass." "Then what is it?" Jeffrey opened the box. Inside was a ring, but not the kind Angela had expected. It was simple, a thin gold band with a small stone that caught the starlight. "It is a promise ring," Jeffrey said, which I know sounds juvenile and possibly ridiculous for two adults in their 30s who already have a child together. but I could not think of another way to say what I wanted to say, which is that I choose you, Jeffrey said. Every day for the rest of my life I choose you. Not because of Marisol, though she is the greatest gift either of us has ever received. Not because of obligation or guilt or any of the complicated history between us. I choose you because you make me better. Because life with you is worth more than everything I accomplished before you. Because I cannot imagine any version of my future that does not include you in it. Jeffrey, you do not have to wear it, he continued. You do not have to accept it. You do not have to say anything at all if you are not ready. I just needed you to know on this day of all days that my commitment is real, that I am not going anywhere, that whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face, I will be here, choosing you, every single time. Angela looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the stars overhead, and the house behind them, and the nursery where their daughter slept. A year ago, she had been walking toward a job interview, alone and desperate and certain that her life would never include anything like this. A year ago, she had collapsed on a highway, sure that survival was the most she could hope for. Now she was sitting on a porch with a man who had transformed himself for her, who had proven, day after day, that people could change, who had earned, through sustained action rather than pretty words, the right to ask her for this. I want to wear it, she said quietly. Really, really. Angela held out her left hand, the fourth finger, where promise rings and engagement rings and wedding rings eventually lived. Not yet on the finger that meant forever, but close. Jeffrey slid the ring on with hands that trembled slightly. It fit perfectly, because of course he had found a way to determine her ring size without asking. He was nothing if not thorough. I love you, Angela said, the words emerging for the first time since before everything had fallen apart. I have been afraid to say it, afraid that saying it would give you power over me again. But I am tired of being afraid. I love you, Jeffrey. I have loved you through anger and hurt, and months of trying to convince myself I did not. I love the man you have become. I love you too, Jeffrey replied, his voice thick with emotion. I have loved you since the moment we met, even when I was too broken to show it properly. I will love you for the rest of my life, whether you let me or not. They sat together on the porch, Angela's hand in his, the ring catching starlight. Not engaged, not married, not finished with the work of rebuilding trust, but committed, chosen, moving towards something neither of them had believed was possible a year ago. Inside the house, Marisol stirred in her sleep, dreaming whatever babies dream about. Outside, her parents sat together in comfortable silence, grateful for collapsed highways and second chances and the courage to try again. Now I need to speak to you one final time before we reach the conclusion of this story. We have traveled together through heartbreak and healing, through betrayal and transformation, through the slow, painful, beautiful process of two people learning to trust each other again. If you have made it this far, if you have invested this time in Angela and Jeffrey's journey, then you understand what we do here at Mr. Dawson's Stories. We tell the truth about love, not the fairy tale version where everything works out perfectly, the real version where people hurt each other and have to choose whether to walk away or do the work of repair. This story is almost over, but before we get to the ending, I need you to do something. Think about your own life. Think about the relationships you have walked away from or the ones you are fighting to save. Think about whether you are Angela, learning to trust again, or Jeffrey, trying to prove you have changed. Think about whether there is someone in your life who deserves a second chance or someone you need to ask for one. These are the questions that matter. These are the stories we carry with us. If this video has meant something to you, I need you to show it. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you have not already. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story. And most importantly, share this. Share it with someone who is struggling to forgive. Share it with someone who is trying to change. Share it with anyone who needs to hear that broken things can be made whole again. Now let us finish this story together. Marisol's first birthday arrived like a milestone that marked more than just 12 months of life. Angela woke that morning in Jeffrey's house, in Jeffrey's bed, a development that had occurred gradually over the preceding months as boundaries continued to dissolve and commitment deepened. She still had her grandmother's house. She still maintained independence and separation in important ways. But increasingly, this was where she slept, where she felt at home. Jeffrey was already awake beside her, propped on one elbow, watching her with the expression that still made her heart flutter despite everything. "Happy birthday," he said quietly. "It is not my birthday." "It is the birthday of the day you became a mother," Jeffrey replied. "That counts for something." Angela smiled and reached up to touch his face. The gesture still felt new, even after months of growing intimacy. The ability to touch him freely, without guardedness or hesitation, was a gift she did not take for granted. "What time are your parents arriving?" she asked. "Noon, which gives us approximately 4 hours before our house is invaded by grandparents, Grace, and anyone else Marisol has charmed into becoming part of her extended family. She does have that effect on people. She gets it from you," Jeffrey said. "The ability to make everyone feel like they are the most important person in the room." "Or from you," Angela countered. "The ability to command attention just by existing. Maybe both. A combination of our best qualities. Let us hope she avoids our worst ones." They lay together for another moment, savoring the quiet before the chaos of birthday celebrations. Through the baby monitor on the nightstand, they could hear Marisol beginning to stir, her morning sounds transitioning from sleepy murmurs to active babbling. "That is our cue," Angela said, starting to rise. "Wait," Jeffrey caught her hand. "Before the day starts, before we are surrounded by people and presents and all the obligations of celebration, I want you to know something." "What?" "This is everything I ever wanted," Jeffrey said simply. "This morning, this room, this life we have built together. I spent decades thinking success meant quarterly earnings and market dominance. I was wrong. Success is this: waking up next to you, hearing our daughter in the next room, knowing that whatever the day brings, I will face it with my family." Angela felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Not sad tears. The other kind. The kind that came from being so full of happiness there was nowhere else for it to go. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Jeffrey replied. "Now let us go celebrate our daughter." The party was chaos in the best possible way. Marisol did not understand what birthdays meant, but she understood attention, and she received plenty of it. Jeffrey's parents arrived with presents that were excessive despite Angela's requests for moderation. Grace arrived with homemade cake and pointed observations about whether Jeffrey was treating Angela properly. Neighbors Angela had befriended over the past months arrived with their own children, creating a symphony of toddler noise that would have been overwhelming a year ago but now felt like home. Jeffrey moved through the party with ease, comfortable in ways that would have been impossible to imagine 14 months ago. He talked with Grace without defensiveness, accepting her continued scrutiny as the price of her eventual approval. He tolerated his mother's suggestions about how he should be doing things differently, nodding politely while ignoring advice that did not apply. He held his daughter and posed for photos and looked like exactly what he was: a father, a partner, a man who had found his place. Angela watched him from across the yard, struck by how completely he had transformed. The billionaire who had once measured everything in returns and advantages now measured success in giggles and sticky fingers and the simple joy of being present for his daughter's first birthday. "You look happy." Grace had appeared beside her, a slice of cake in hand, observing the same scene Angela was watching. "I am happy," Angela admitted. "It suits you," Grace said. "Happiness. I was not sure you would find it again after everything. You were so broken when you came back here. So convinced that you would never trust anyone again." "I almost did not," Angela said. "There were moments when I wanted to shut him out completely, moments when it felt safer to stay alone than to risk being hurt again." "What changed your mind?" "He did." Angela watched Jeffrey lift Marisol onto his shoulders, both of them laughing. Every day for a year, he showed up. He did not push. He did not demand forgiveness. He just kept proving, through action instead of words, that he had changed. Eventually, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Grace was quiet for a moment, following Angela's gaze. "I still do not trust him completely," Grace admitted. "Old women develop instincts that are hard to override. But I trust you, and if you have decided he is worth the risk, that is enough for me." "Thank you," Angela said. "That means more than you know. Just remember," Grace added, her voice sharpening, "if he ever hurts you again, I know where he lives. And I am not above consequences." Angela laughed. "I will keep that in mind." The party wound down as afternoon faded to evening. Guests departed with full stomachs and promises to meet again soon. Jeffrey's parents left with excessive hugging and instructions about Marisol's development that Angela pretended to absorb. Grace lingered longest, helping with cleanup and issuing final assessments of the day's success. When everyone was finally gone, Angela and Jeffrey stood in the quiet of their kitchen, Marisol asleep in her crib, the house still echoing with the energy of celebration. "We survived," Jeffrey said, leaning against the counter. "We did," Angela agreed. "First birthday in the books. Only 17 more years until she is an adult making her own terrible decisions." "Do not even joke about that," Angela said. "I want her to stay this age forever, small enough to hold, simple enough to satisfy with cake and attention. It does not work that way, I know." Angela sighed. "She is going to grow up. She is going to push us away, and then need us desperately, and then push us away again. We are going to make mistakes. She is going to make mistakes. It is all going to be messy and complicated and nothing like we planned." "Sounds about right," Jeffrey said. "Are you ready for it?" Angela considered the question seriously. A year ago, she would have said no. A year ago, she would have been certain that she would face all of it alone, that partnership was impossible, that the only person she could count on was herself. Now she looked at the man standing across from her, the man who had failed her and fought his way back, the man who had transformed himself through sustained effort and genuine commitment, the man who loved their daughter with the same fierce intensity that Angela did. "Yes," she said finally, "I am ready. As long as I am not doing it alone. You will never do it alone again." Jeffrey promised. "Whatever comes, we face it together." He crossed the kitchen and took her hands. The promise ring glinted on her finger, catching the overhead light. A symbol of commitment that was not yet marriage but was no less meaningful. "I've been thinking," Jeffrey said carefully, "about next steps." "What kind of next steps?" "The permanent kind." Jeffrey met her eyes. "Not right now. Not today. I know we are still building. But eventually, Angela, eventually, I want to marry you. I want to stand up in front of everyone we love and promise to spend the rest of my life choosing you. I want Marisol to grow up in a home where her parents are partners in every sense of the word." "Is that a proposal?" "Not yet." Jeffrey smiled. "This is a notice of intent. I am telling you now so that when I do propose, properly, with planning and romance, and whatever else proposals are supposed to include, you will know it is coming. You will have time to decide whether you want to say yes." Angela felt her heart expand. The man who had once been too closed off to discuss feelings was now telegraphing his intentions months in advance, giving her space to process, respecting her need for control over her own story. "When you do propose," she said slowly, "ask me properly, not with assumptions or expectations. Ask me like you actually want to know the answer." "I will." "And Jeffrey," Angela squeezed his hands, "when you ask, I am probably going to say yes." The smile that spread across his face was brighter than anything she had ever seen from him. Not the polished smile of a businessman closing a deal. The genuine smile of a man who had just been told his most important dream was within reach. "Probably," he repeated. "Almost certainly. I can work with almost certainly," Jeffrey said, and he kissed her. The wedding happened 8 months later. Not a huge production, not the kind of society event Jeffrey's family would have expected before everything changed. A small ceremony in Grace's backyard, surrounded by the people who had witnessed their journey. Marisol as flower girl, toddling down a makeshift aisle, scattering petals with gleeful inaccuracy. Angela wore a simple white dress. Jeffrey wore a suit he had worn before because excess seemed wrong for this kind of commitment. Grace officiated because she had gotten certified online specifically for the occasion and refused to let anyone else do it. The vows were personal. Angela went first, holding Jeffrey's hands, their daughter watching from her grandmother's arms. 18 months ago, I collapsed on a highway and you appeared. I did not want to be saved. I was not looking for rescue. I had built a life without you, and I was determined to keep building it alone. But you did not try to save me. You did not try to fix me. You just showed up, every day, proving through action instead of words that you had become someone different, someone I could trust, someone I could love. She paused, steadying her voice. I did not believe in second chances. I thought people were who they were, and change was just performance. You proved me wrong. You earned this. You earned me. And I promise to keep choosing you every day, as long as we both live. Jeffrey's eyes were wet when she finished. He took a breath before beginning his own vows. 2 years ago, I let you walk out of my life because I was too proud to admit I was wrong. I spent 14 months pretending I was fine, achieving things that meant nothing, building an empire that felt like a prison. Then I found you on that highway, and everything I thought I knew about myself crumbled into dust." He squeezed her hands. "You should not have given me another chance. I did not deserve it. But you did anyway, not out of weakness or desperation, but because you are the bravest person I have ever known. Brave enough to risk your heart again. Brave enough to let me prove I could be better. I promise to spend every day honoring that bravery. I promise to show up, to stay present, to choose you and our daughter above everything else. I promise to never give you reason to regret the chance you took on me." Grace cleared her throat, unexpectedly emotional despite her attempts at composure. "By the power vested in me by an online certification course and the state of this great nation, I now pronounce you husband and wife." She turned to Jeffrey. "You may kiss your bride. Finally, officially, legally, do not mess this up." Jeffrey laughed and kissed Angela while their guests cheered, and Marisol clapped without understanding why, but sensing that happiness was happening. The reception was dinner at a local restaurant, nothing fancy, everyone talking over everyone else. Jeffrey's parents seemed almost relaxed, which was unprecedented. Grace held court at her table, telling stories about Angela that made her blush and stories about Jeffrey that made him cringe. Marisol fell asleep before the cake was cut, exhausted from being adorable all day. Angela watched Jeffrey carry her to a quiet corner, settling into a chair with their daughter against his chest, his hand gentle on her back. This was the man she had married. Not the billionaire, not the empire builder, the father, the partner, the person who had broken her and then spent 18 months putting her back together, piece by piece, day by day. She walked over and sat beside them. "Having second thoughts?" Jeffrey asked quietly, not wanting to wake the baby. "Third thoughts," Angela replied. "Fourth, fifth. I've been thinking all day about whether this is real, whether I might wake up tomorrow and discover it was all a dream. It is real. I know." Angela leaned against his shoulder. "That is what keeps surprising me, that something this good can be real. You deserve good things," Jeffrey said. "You deserve everything good. I intend to spend the rest of my life proving that." Angela closed her eyes, surrounded by the sounds of celebration, her daughter breathing softly, her husband steady beside her. This was not the life she had planned. It was not the life she had expected. It was better, harder and messier and more complicated, but better. She had walked alone through fire and emerged stronger. She had been broken and had healed. She had given a second chance and watched it transform into something beautiful. Whatever came next, she would face it with Jeffrey, with Marisol, with the family they had built from ruins. And that was enough. That was everything. 5 years later, Angela stood in the backyard of their home, watching Marisol play with her younger brother. Gabriel had arrived 2 years after the wedding, completing something Angela had not known was incomplete. Jeffrey came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "The highway," Angela replied. "The day I collapsed. The moment you found me. That was a long time ago." "It was." Angela turned in his arms to face him. "But I think about it sometimes, about how close I came to giving up, about what would have happened if you had not been there." "You would have survived," Jeffrey said with certainty. "You would have figured it out. You always do. Maybe. But I am glad I did not have to." "Me too." They stood together, watching their children play. Marisol bossing Gabriel around with the confidence of an older sister. Gabriel ignoring her completely with the stubbornness of a child who knew his own mind. "Do you ever regret it?" Jeffrey asked. "Giving me another chance? Letting me back into your life?" "Never," Angela said immediately. "Not once. I regret how we got here. I regret the pain and the wasted time and all the months I spent struggling alone. But I do not regret where we ended up. Neither do I." Jeffrey pressed a kiss to her forehead, the same gesture he had offered years ago on a couch when everything between them was still uncertain. It meant the same thing now that it had then. Patience, promise, commitment that did not demand anything in return. "Mama," Marisol's voice cut through the moment. "Gabriel is not playing correctly. There is no correct way to play." Angela called back. "There is, if I make the rules." Angela laughed and separated from Jeffrey. "Duty calls." She said, "Go." He smiled. "I will start dinner." She walked toward her children, ready to negotiate peace between siblings, ready to navigate the endless small crises that made up parenthood. Behind her, Jeffrey headed for the kitchen, ready to cook for his family, ready to be present for another ordinary evening. This was their life. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real. Built from collapse and second chances and the daily choice to keep trying. If you have stayed with this story until the end, I need to say something important. This was not just a story about a billionaire and a woman he hurt. This was a story about all of us, about the ways we fail the people we love, and the question of whether we can ever make it right, about the courage it takes to trust again after betrayal, about the long, hard work of becoming someone better than we used to be. Jeffrey Murphy was not a good man when this story started. He was selfish and careless and so focused on protecting himself that he failed to protect the woman he loved. But he changed. Not overnight, not through grand gestures, through 18 months of showing up, through sustained action, through earning trust instead of demanding it. Angela Reyes was not looking for rescue. She had built a life without Jeffrey. She had proven she could survive anything. But she was brave enough to let him try again. Brave enough to risk her heart for the possibility of something beautiful. Their story matters because it could be any of our stories. We have all been Jeffrey, hurting people we love through carelessness or fear. We have all been Angela, wondering whether to give someone another chance or protect ourselves forever. The answer is not the same for everyone. Some people do not change. Some second chances are not deserved. Only you can decide which situation you are facing. But if this story has taught us anything, it is that transformation is possible, that people can become better, that broken things can be made whole again, if both people are willing to do the work. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching until the end. Thank you for believing in stories that show us our own potential for growth. If this video has meant something to you, I need you to act on it right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson Stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story. And share this. Share it with everyone who needs to hear that second chances are real, that redemption is possible, that the person who hurt you might actually be capable of becoming someone new. Comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me about the second chances you have given or received. Tell me whether you believe people can change. This is Mr. Dawson Stories. We will see you in the next one.